Yeah. Subscribe to the channel. Svetlana came to her senses from a bitter taste in her mouth. She really wanted a drink. There was a feeling of nausea. Her head was buzzing, or everything around was buzzing. At first, she didn't understand where she was, but she was definitely lying down. It was very tight. Sveta tried to move, and she was terrified. She was in some narrow place. She was leaning on something hard. Her mind gradually started to clear up, but thoughts in her head were heavy, and they were overboiling with great effort. Svetlana was going to call someone to help her. She was in the dark, and she didn't know if it was dark in this place or if she was being under the vision. Fear rolled back with force. She tried to feel the space around her. But her fingers immediately clung to something smooth, to a smooth fabric. Behind her, with a weak right hand, there was a wall that could not be moved. Is this really true? Is she in a coffin? Svetlana felt her head spinning. She began to breathe frequently, but could not scream. With difficulty, she opened her lips, trying to say at least something, but panicked more. The body did not listen. It was forged by the actions of the strongest drugs, which allowed someone to make a fatal trick out of it. The van in which the coffin of Svetlana was shaking stopped, driving several dozen meters along the heart beat with a furious speed from the closeness of salvation and the feeling of incredible fear. What will happen next? The coffin was carefully unloaded and lowered to the ground. Then Sveta became really out of control. She thought that things would get worse, but she almost lost consciousness of how cruel and unpredictable the further outcome of the events could be. Put her here. The male voice from the light identified in him Igor, his beloved wife. What's going on? Is this some kind of stupid game? Igor has always loved extreme sports and presented unusual gifts. And with humor, he didn't get along with everything. Only this time the joke went too far. And we'll finally let her relax. Finally, this is the shit where she should be. Mannerly stretching the words, as if the capital thing was said by Sveta's friend. Why did Milana say that? Her heart was choked by strong mental pain and instant enlightenment. Igor and Milana were in a conversation. They never really loved her, but united to kill. I can't believe we did it. Now Igor's voice was heard much better. The light felt the wind on the skin. The grave workers removed the lid from the coffin, allowing her to breathe easier. It was difficult to breathe even because of the blood. It was impossible to notice from the side how her chest was smoking. I waited for this day for so long. But she won't bother us anymore. She's gone, my dear. Milana took her husband and girlfriend in her arms. Although she didn't see it in person, she understood what kind of relationships her close people had. It was the love feelings that made them unite for the sake of the living. We were lucky that her father died just a year ago. If it weren't for his illness, we would have had to have him, said Jaeger a little quieter, fearing that the grave dwellers nearby might hear him. The dog and Vasily, the old cemetery worker, were. There were too many emotions inside Svetlana. She imagined how she would scream and scare these two criminals who wanted to bury her. But she didn't even dare to move or blink. Who knows what Jaeger would do? If he was so close to take over the wealth of his family and wife, he wouldn't have a ceremony with the burials. No. She could not risk other people's lives like that. People who are brought to despair or rage are capable of terrible things. And with the money that Jaeger was supposed to own, he can bury at least 3 people in one grave, and he will not have anything for it. Sveta realized that only 2 criminals came to her funeral. They did not seem to know the rest. As she heard, all moments of life were passed before her eyes, like a movie. There were both happy and sad ones among them. But now it didn't matter. It seemed that Sveta had already calmed down with her fate. Where could she go? And if someone pokes her and wants to conduct an autopsy or an examination? Milan leaned over her friend's face, looking at her pale face. Horrible. And you can't say that it's a human. Looks like a doll. Even creepy. There's no one close to Svetka. And the only person in this town who's friends with her is you, said Igor. And these drugs quickly come out of the blood. Not a single expert can find anything suspicious about them. I've taken care of everything, just be sure. And I went for it, not to get stuck in some kind of a desert. I was preparing. Hearing this, Sveta got so angry, but immediately remembered. She understood that from strong emotions she could either sweat or blush, and then she would be killed for real. When will you finish? Jaeger turned to Vasily and Leonid, the young partner of the experienced grave dweller. In minutes, they answered him from the bottom of the earth pit. Okay, let's get out of here. Igor hugged his beloved shoulder. Don't look at how it will end. I want to go to the restaurant. I was really pissed off by that. Milan was among the cemetery crosses and monuments. For the last time, Milana looked at the face of her former friend, surrounded by a gentle blue color, and smiled at Igor. He was considered a tomboy, and then he left his wife's body and the endless lair of the black housekeeper. Some strange people. Leonid spoke out of his mind to his partner. They didn't really have a ceremony with this woman. No flowers, no tears, no farewells. I haven't seen anything like this in years. I looked at Vasily, following Jaeger's car. But I've rarely seen anything like this. It's probably some kind of orphanage. And his car is a beast. Borya, foo, go away. He yelled at the big dog again. But he would always obey. Only today, he was kneeling, as if he was being smeared with honey. After the close-by lights were off, the dog began to bark and bark right at the coffin lid, which had already been lowered from above into Svetlana's motionless body. Vasily tied Borka to the fence so that he wouldn't get angry, and he could easily push one of them right into the pit. He said it strictly, and then turned to Leonid. Let's let her go, and then I'll handle it myself. Are you sure? You can bury and bury here. My body is already used to physical pain. She won't notice the load. Vasilis praised the cunning priest because he was cunning. He wanted to be alone with himself, so he tried to send Leonid away. He was a good guy, but he loved to chat. He was constantly grumbling, and nothing could distract him from the subject. At his age, Vasily was very tired of him and wanted peace. He was also impressed with such work, but later, the funeral became a custom for him. Having coped with the most difficult part, Leonid picked up his backpack from the ground and said goodbye. Vasily looked up at the dark lid of the coffin and began to pour it with the ground. Then Borya forgot his own voice. Shut up! The owner shouted at him, not distracted by the matter, and then a dog slipped right under his shoulder. Borya got out of the... But the dog didn't shut up. What a fly bit you today. Come on back. Vasily hoped that Borya would get out on his own. The pit was not so deep, but he didn't think to obey the owner. He barked and howled, insisting that Vasily obey him. What's wrong with you? Svetlana heard a man landing on the coffin from above. Borya didn't give up, because she had already discovered that she could at least bark. This barking made the dog not give up. What is this? Vasily was scared. Get away! He commanded Borka and somehow fit into the pit without stepping on the coffin. He lifted the lid and froze. Two gray female eyes looked at him, the one that had recently been a dead woman. Mother of God! Vasily crossed himself, and Sveta tried to mingle something unrelated. Honey, how is that possible? Vasily helped her to take a sitting position and stood up with frightened eyes. They're not there? She barely spoke, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Who? And these? Here are the bastards. Here are the scoundrels. Vasily barely managed to get a worse scolding, but he managed to hold on in time. We need to call the doctors. How are you feeling? We need an ambulance immediately. Better. Svetlana breathed in with a full chest and stretched her hand forward, trying to stop Vasily. He already put an old button phone in his dirty working pants. Don't tell anyone. You can't. Okay, as you say. Let's get out of here. The light could not calm down. She cried when she clung to the ground to pull up and get out on the surface. Among the crosses and numerous portraits of the deceased, she felt even worse. But she could have become one of them today. Only a miracle could save her life otherwise. Take me away from here. Take me away. I beg you. She sat down on a mat and closed her face with her hand so that she could not see anything. Vasily thought for a while. The light was clearly hysterical. He could not simply ask her to wait to clean up the buried grave and to go somewhere to the coffin. He will sort it out very early in the morning until no one sees it. Sveta was driving in the same van. She was terrified to think about what happened to her today. Yesterday, she had dinner with her husband in her luxurious two-story house, inherited from her parents, and today, barely dead by the hands of Jaeger. He obviously poured her some wine, and she fell asleep right behind the table, unnoticed. But yesterday was their year anniversary. Igor deliberately suggested spending time at home without any pathos and foreign attention. It doesn't look like you. Sveta and Griva laughed, looking at their husbands right in the eyes. Usually you like to stand out. I'm already used to you celebrating everything with a big crowd. Best restaurant, live music, congratulations to the orchestra. Don't pressure me. I hardly refused. Igor bowed and kissed her. For you, by the way. Yes, I really appreciate your desire not to please me. She giggled. To be together on such a significant day, for us, is the best option. You even let the cooks go early today and cooked everything yourself. Svetlana, with disgust, remembered all the lies of Igor's speech last evening. He was sincere with her. How long had they been thinking about it? In Milan, how could she stab her back with a knife? To wish her death? Milan grew up in a middle-class family, but at the university, she only made friends with those who had money. That's how they met with Sveta. It was difficult to call them very close friends, but they were sure to see each other a couple of times a month. Svetlana didn't pay attention to her modest attitude and hurried to sit down. Now will be easier for you. Vasily promised and put a kettle. I'll brew you hot with herbs. I would suggest something stronger, but now it's better for you to be sober. And besides, mix with drugs if they really are. I can't think straight. My husband pumped me up with some dose of some crap. My brain's melted. Svetlana pressed on the beads. You are the only one who knows about my situation, and I don't want anyone else to know about it. Only you can help me. Please, lend me some money. I will definitely return everything. Definitely. I am very rich. That's why they decided to kill me. Still, Svetlana spoke, not being afraid of this word. Vasily was looking at the miracle of a stranger who had escaped in a light shock. He had seen nothing but years of work in the cemetery, but nothing like that. And what kind of person in his right mind would come up with the idea of burying someone alive, and even his wife? He looked clearly like a bastard. Your husband. He shook his head, looking at the lost light. She was shaken by the stress of anger. I'll give you money. Don't worry, daughter. How can you be abandoned in such a situation? But what are you going to do? I don't know yet. But one thing is for sure. This freak will pay for everything. I will make sure that they both get their rewards. They wanted to kill me, and in such barbaric ways. How reliable I was. Sveta burst into tears, remembering the events of the past. Boria, who had been sleeping on the floor all this time, got up on his feet and came up to the guest, putting her heavy head on her knees. Such a good boy. Sveta stroked him between the ears. I didn't even thank you, you idiot, but it was you who saved me. The dog barked with a tail. It was clearly pleasant to hear praise. Boria is smart. I got used to him in 7 years. Vasily smiled and also stroked his fluffy friend on his black back. You can't say how little he was. I didn't think he would grow up into such a child. I beat his mouth and street dogs. His mother was nowhere to be seen. Wandering animals are often harmed in the cemetery. People leave food on graves. Their dogs are fed. Boria got caught in the trap. Adults ran after him, trying to break him. I barely managed to break them with a shovel. That day, I remembered Vasily. My heart was pounding like crazy, but I couldn't get past it. I took him to my place. I thought I'd get him in good hands, but Boria was so mean. It turned out I was a bit too stingy. With my work, such an assistant is the best. Sveta scratched the happy dog behind his ear, and he was happy to get a massage. I'll stay the night in the hotel, because it's a bit cramped for guests here. Okay. Vasily got up, got to the table, and pulled out his wallet. Here. He stretched Sveta a few bills. It should be enough for the first time. I'll call you a car, so you can get there without any trouble. After having barely taken the room in the sluggish hotel, where the lights didn't even require a document for the settlement, she couldn't sleep. There was no sleep in one eye. The events of the last day impressed her so much that it was now scary to close my eyes. Different thoughts were crawling into her head. And suddenly, Jaeger found out that she had escaped from the coffin and would come after her. Suddenly, they followed her with Milan. But most of all, Sveta was concerned about the way she could help her husband and friend to get the traitor to the water. She had to act with her mind. Sveta lay on a dark bed almost all night and could close her eyes only at dawn. She knew what she had to do. Having arrived at the cemetery, Sveta immediately went to the old woman Vasily. But he didn't show up there. She was terribly scared to walk around the grave after yesterday's incident. It's scary to imagine that her life could have been cut off in just years. Vasily, she shouted out loud to let herself know. After the second attempt, she noticed Boria running towards her. "Hello, my good one." Sveta stroked the dog on shiny wool, and he started to jump around, asking for more affection. "Where is your master?" Following the dog, Sveta found Vasily at one of the old graves. He was dealing with the weeds that filled the entire territory, from the burial site to the very fence. "So, you've come up with something?" He turned to her without greeting. "I've come up with something, and I'll need your help again." "Okay." I didn't expect anything else. I waved at Vasily, not distracted by the matter. Svetlana sat next to him and began to pull thick, gnarly grass, which did not succumb to her unwise action. She had never had to do such a thing before, but this activity calmed her down. "Take a better rag." Vasily stretched out a small item of the inventory to her. "You can't get yourself so far down the road. So what? We need to scare Igor. We need to call him and tell him that you know his secrets. You supposedly saw me open my eyes, which means you're alive. If he starts to resist, we'll tell him that your partner knows everything. Then Igor will have no other choice but to try to shut you up. As you meet, you will lead them to a conversation, so that every word gets recorded on the recorder. It's not a difficult thing, only if Igor was talkative. He's a chatterbox, loves to boast. He and Barak boasted to me in front of the whole city, and then his friends asked me for money in return. The light flashed. There is no danger for you. Even if he tries to harm you somehow, it will all be recorded. I'm hiding nearby. He will definitely disarm my appearance. Good, you came up with it. You should try. I need this bastard to realize everything. I'll try. I saved his number. I'll call you as soon as we're done here." Vasily agreed without any security. Half an hour later, Svetlana, Vasily, and Boria were walking the old lady. "Well, I'm calling." After a short rest, Vasily pressed the call button and raised his phone to his ear. "Hello. We need to meet and talk about how you buried your wife alive. Today I'm waiting for you at my old lady's. Soma came to text me." "What did he say?" With excitement, Sveta asked, looking at the sweaty Vasily. He only replied, "Okay." Apparently, he was so scared that he did not argue. Vasily called the police officer to the scene. The men were in good relations, because Alexei Valerievich loved his job and acted for the benefit of the citizens. He never was lazy to listen to people's requests and conduct a check. "So you claim that your husband was organizing an attempt." He clarified it from Svetlana after listening to her story with surprise. "Well, he's an inventive husband. Soon you will see for yourself," assured his light. Together with Alexei, she walked around the old woman so as not to get Jaeger in the eye and began to wait for her husband to appear. "You're old. I'm not a mistake, I'll see," said Jaeger, closing the door behind him. "What? You needed a whole day to decide on blackmail." "I've never had such a chance in my life," answered Vasily, barely holding back his anger. He would have torn Jaeger apart after what he had done, and he is still standing with a smile on his face, as if he had seen Vasily and himself in the same way. "Hold it, don't talk." He stretched the old lady's owner a heavy bag. "If rumors spread, first of all, I will think of you, and then the new grave on this earth will be yours." "But why are you doing this to her?" "It was a very painful death. Since your wife was moving, it means she was. The deal is done. Now you are my accomplice. If you want to hand me over, you will also get a term. There will be someone else to worry about." Svetka was a boldly spoiled white-handed. "She never treated me like a thief, so let her do what she wants." Igor turned around, opened the door, and froze. In front of him was Alexei Valerievich in police uniform, and next to him was a living and harmless Sveta. "Now you won't say a word." She hit her husband on the cheek with a swing, but Jaeger didn't get confused. He rushed to the gate of the cemetery to jump into the car, but didn't have time. "Boria, take it," Vasily commanded, and the black dog flew on Jaeger's back, breaking his legs. He clung to the pants and began to torture her. "Take this stupid dog away," Jaeger said. "Take it away, yuck." "Is there a recording of the conversation?" Svetlana turned to Vasily. "You are offending." He smiled, taking the phone out of his pocket. "I have everything. This scoundrel will not turn away." After the arrest of Igor and Milana, Svetlana was able to breathe. Now she could calmly testify and wait for the date of the hearing on the accused. She tried not to cross with them again when they were interrogated, so as not to hear their false words and repentance. Igor did not pretend to be rough and cruel, but Milana shed crocodile tears. "Dear, forgive me. He was the one who persuaded me." She clung to the hands of the light when they accidentally crossed the prosecutor's corridor. "I beg your pardon. I was not myself. I would never take her away from me." Sveta turned to the policeman with irritation. "I don't want to see her. Please, keep us from crossing." It was nice to return to the parents' house. Sveta forgot about the first thing in a long healing dream. The last couple of weeks, she was called from the prosecutor's office, asked a bunch of questions, and her surroundings were disturbed. The servant in the house did not believe in what had happened. "Svetlana Ivanovna, we are so glad that you are alive," said the cook Galina from the face of all the workers. "Thank you, I'm fine." She smiled. "And thank God we, Igor Yurievich, always found ourselves a little bit of that." Sveta realized that without Vasily's participation, she would not have survived, and could not get those who wanted her dead to answer. Of course, she immediately returned him the dead. Having done her own business, Svetlana realized that this was not enough. She felt the need to pay off Vasily and Boria, that they were not indifferent to her situation. Svetlana arrived at the Klabachinskaya old woman's house on a huge white car that her father used to drive. So she felt closer to her native man. "What people?" Vasily came to her. "I thought she had forgotten. So that's what you think of me." Sveta laughed and hugged him. "I brought you gifts here, all sorts of delicious things." She stretched the man's bag. "Let's go then, have some tea." "Boria, don't get your feet tangled," he ordered Vasily to a happy friend. Sveta was sitting at a small table, which was for 2 people, and was watching Vasily put the food on the table. She knew that the man had a son. One day they were talking about it. Only Timofey had disappeared many years ago. He went to work on the watchtower to the north but never came back. His father shared his sorrow with his voice. It was clear to Vasily that it was difficult to remember the suffering he had suffered after the disappearance of the only child. He did not like to talk about it. Why would he be curious if it would not bring him back his son? Vasily did not even know if he was alive or not. Not a single leaf from him during all these years. Uncle Vasyuk carefully turned to him. "What if I try to find your Timofey?" Vasily froze with a full of water, but she kept talking. "I'm not kidding. I'll do my best. You saved my life, not being afraid of your own. Can I just leave everything the way it is when I can do a lot now? I have money, connections. The city has not yet forgotten the name of my father. If I pull the right strings, perhaps I can find out what happened there and why no one took responsibility for his disappearance." "Oh, you shouldn't have gone there," said Vasily. "But where did you get that influence from?" "It's the other side of the country." "So what?" "The light was on its own. Give me a chance. I'll do everything I can. I won't back down. I really want to help. If I had doubts in myself, I wouldn't have to worry you." Sveta started searching for Timofey and hired several detectives at once so that they could work in the team. "I'll pay as much as I need. If you need money to talk to someone, immediately tell them. If Timofey is alive, you should at least get him out of the dungeon," Sveta ordered, paying a generous advance to her coworkers. The search was completed much faster than she expected. With a thick paper folder, Sveta rushed to Vasily as soon as the detectives gave her the corresponding report. "Your Tim was found," Sveta said as soon as Vasily opened the door in front of her at a late hour. "Here, this is your son." She took a photo of a man in the hospital room under the blanket from the folder. "What's wrong with him?" Vasily grabbed the photo and began to look into the familiar features of the face, who grew older and more severe. His son's face shrunk. During his work, he was crushed by a log, and he became disabled. The tomb of Timothy is in a state shelter. It's a deaf place. There are few people there. Your son is on state care, but he is alive, and he can be transferred here. Vasily hugged the light and cried out. He felt such relief. But at the same time, he was offended by himself. How could he live so many years when his child was injured? I'm such a fool, an old idiot. I should have tried harder to find him. Don't blame yourself. Uncle Vas, you would hardly have managed on your own. All of us often work from the bottom. We don't want to deal with such cases. Many people have been in such institutions for years, and no one is in touch with their relatives. Everyone doesn't care. It's cold. I need to arrange a transport. I beg you, Sveta, help me meet him. Of course, we'll fly together and come back together. The meetings were too hasty. Vasily had to turn to his old acquaintances to leave Boria for a while. He was overwhelmed with fear and excitement before meeting his son, fearing that he would not forgive him. Before entering the room, Vasily was in horror and froze. Do not be afraid. Tim will be very happy to see you. Svetlana took him by the hand and entered the room with 4 beds. Having met with the son with a look, Vasily grabbed his face and giggled. Oh my God, Sonny. Father. Tim was tired of visiting, not understanding where they came from. How are you? But hug him already. Sveta pushed Vasily to his son's bed and smiled when they clung to each other without a word, whistling over their emotions. Sveta herself hardly held back her tears. The patients in the ward looked at them with envy, some with a smile. Many of them were. They also suffered from circumstances and dreamed that someone would love them so much and take any kind of trauma. Son, why didn't you write to me? I didn't hope you were alive. At first, I thought you just ran away from me. You always wanted to live well, and I made you go to the cemetery and live in poverty. Forgive me for this, forgive me. Vasily cried on the way back by plane. He was glad that Timo did not push him away. On the contrary, he was very happy to meet his father. I don't blame you for anything, Dad. I'm crazy about loneliness and monotony in life. My legs don't listen to me anymore. I'm an invalid who nobody needs. We will conduct an examination in the best clinic in the city. They are better than the local doctors, believe me, and will say, is it possible to operate? So let's not lose hope. Sorry for the modest question. Robka began to Timofey, turning to the world. But who are you to my father? His rich young passion? Yes. What are you completely without a guest? He got angry at Vasily's son. Did I teach you this? No. He made the world laugh at what he heard. Your father has given me a great service, saved my life. Sveta turned away with a smile and decided to take a little nap. She knew that doctors in their city had to help Timofey. Her father used to do charity and help medical institutions to get the necessary modern equipment. She hoped that doctors would gladly return her debt when she turned to them. Yes, we need an operation here, said Nikolai Dmitrievich after studying the results of the last Timofeia. And you know what? You will walk, even run. But there are risks anyway, and this should be taken into account. Unfortunately, no one can guarantee, but the chances of complete recovery are very high. Thank you, doctor. How many months to wait for the next operation? Asked Timo, who couldn't stand to get up again. What a line! Nicely laughed Nikolai Dmitrievich. You will be operated on Thursday, so today we put you in the ward for observation. Vasily and Svetlana measured the corridor of the clinic from the very beginning of Tim's operation. They couldn't find a place for themselves, complaining that time is going so slowly. Oh, when will it all end? Vasily was breathing out periodically, looking at the clock over his head. A nurse from the operating room appeared in front of him and asked, You need an urgent transplant. Who has what blood group? Hearing Sveta's answer, she called her with herself. You need to hurry up. Having put Vatka in the place of a stroke, where she had just taken the blood, Svetlana was surprised to hear the doctor's words. You have the same blood with Timofey. In small towns like ours, it is so rare. Therefore, I advise you to do a DNA test. In the maternity hospitals, children are always confused, or intentionally. Sveta did not worry about Vasily with the guesses of the doctors. After she barely died a terrible death because of completely unexpected people, she would not be surprised by anything. She wanted to have a test, but she had to consult with Timofey. Hello. Sveta smiled at him a few days later when he was transferred from the emergency room. Welcome back, Dad, Timofey said in a weak voice, seeing how his father held him by the hand. Everyone was happy that the operation went well. Let them have a rehabilitation, but no one complained. When the DNA test was conducted according to Timofey, Svetlana opened the envelope with the result at his and Vasily's hands right in the room. According to the result, she declared, "You are my brother," looking at the man. "Father, did you know?" "No, but I thought about it when you looked at the light and talked about the analysis." "My wife, Katerina. She died in the wild when Tima was born. I couldn't believe this terrible thing. So I set up a scandal all over the house and promised to go to the capital with my complaint of negligence. But what could I really do? Katya wouldn't give it back to me," panicked Vasily. It was clear from him that he was still suffering from his wife's loss, especially in the difficult times of the end of the last century. Vasily desperately needed a wife, and Tima needed a mother. But we were expecting a boy and a girl, Katya and I. But the doctors told me that the baby was born dead, and they didn't bring her so as not to injure me after the news of the death of my wife. I didn't find a place for myself then. I couldn't believe it, but eventually I made up my mind. My parents are already dead. I can't ask them how they were doing. I explained to Sveta in an upset tone. I knew them. They would never do that to other parents, having taken their daughter away from them. Since your parents were influential and rich, the medical staff could decide to substitute our girls themselves to avoid serious consequences. They decided to hurt me between my anger and your father's anger, concluded Vasily. So you are my father and brother, my dear ones? Svetlana always dreamed of her brother, and now he has appeared in her. It's a pity that they met after so many years, but their fate still led them. After the rehabilitation, when the trial over Milan and Jaeger was over, Sveta was able to breathe with relief. I want to go to the cemetery to my mother. I was not even acquainted with her. Sveta said, coming to visit her father and brother. I am with you. Hug her with a Timofey. I have not been to my mother for a long time, for 7 years. Sveta was happy about the family she had found. Having lost her parents who raised her, she also lost her husband and girlfriend. But loneliness did not press on her, because she was no longer alone. Svetlana could not accept the fact that her father and brother refused to live with her in her luxurious house, although they were living in a one-room apartment. Where are we going in such a mess? Answered Vasily, visiting her in the guest house. We are ordinary people. No, it's not ours. Make your life better, daughter. Start a family. This castle will be of use to you. Yes, Dad. We are not beggars. Svet, thank you, but we will not abuse your kindness. Well, let me at least give you a cozy little house with all the amenities, insisted Lana. Svet has been watching ads on the internet for a day. We can get rid of it and buy it. I'll just add some parts. The early call from the prosecutor's office made Sveta not to be scared by a joke, by making her stay in bed. Yegor Yurievich ran away from the detention center during the crossing. The policeman told her, "Are you crazy? What kind of stupid jokes are these?" She replied with an irritated look, but the dream disappeared in a moment. He clung to the 3 recidivists. Perhaps Svetlana Ivanovna will want to take revenge on you, so we warn you. Sveta called and rushed to check all the doors and windows. She put a servant on her ear, ordering her to talk about all the suspicious people that they might notice on the territory of the house. You need a bodyguard, someone from the workers gave the idea. Exactly. Sveta felt relieved. Her brain, depressed in panic, did not immediately think about it. Yes, you live safely, said Yurislav, another challenger for the role of bodyguard. Before him, Svetlana was already talking to 3 candidates and was not satisfied. They gave birth to several scams. Don't be afraid. He warned me right away. They're from my fire. I used to work as a firefighter and got a lot of injuries in my first year of service. He thought it was my calling and threw himself on the brochure, but didn't give a damn about all the rules. And then he paid, and I had to part with my wife. For some reason, Yurislav added his personal problem to it. She left me as soon as she realized that my combat wounds were with me for life. Of course, I try to mask them with various creams and other things, but I'm not a professional. They are still noticeable. Oh, sorry, I got distracted. Yaroslav fixed himself. The house must be equipped with an alarm button, which immediately sends a call to the police when intruding into a stranger's house. Your situation is the most necessary thing. Well, great. No one has ever advised me to do this before. Sveta smiled, realizing that she had found the perfect person for her personal defender. They were talking for about an hour. Yaroslav told how it works. Sveta explained what situation she was in and what she wanted from him. I don't know how long it will take to capture my former self, but I would like to know. Can you live in my house? I can't sleep knowing that there is no one around. Igor knows the house well. He lived here for 3 years after all. Of course, no one is waiting for me at home anyway. I will choose a place on the first floor myself, so that no one jumps past me when I come to you, replied Yaroslav. With the appearance of the bodyguard, Sveta felt much calmer. Daughter, maybe you'll move in with us? Vasily insisted. Come into the world almost every day. Let us be a little cramped, but 2 men will protect you better. And in your house, there are a lot of places where you can hide. We have everything on hand. No, Dad. Thank you, I'll stay. Svetlana was straightened up, sitting in the kitchen opposite her father. Yaroslav knows his business, and I am calm with him. Yes, it was so. Vasily whispered. What is it? Svetlana immediately blushed and was indignantly outraged. It's okay. Her father smiled. You don't want to part with such a brother, do you? Why, brother, with a father, when such an Apollo walks under the side? Svetlana did not want to admit, but Yaroslav was really good to himself. Everyone was amazed when they saw him for the first time. Yaroslav was so strong and confident that she just wanted to be near him. Being together all the time, they communicated a lot like friends. Yarek was able to draw interesting conversations, but his gaze was always concentrated and alert. I warned you that you had better not go to work. And if something important, let the subordinate send you documents by courier or email, Yaroslav was heartily repeating, when Sveta once again asked to accompany her to the office of the firm, founded by her foster father. Shouldn't you do what I say? And Sveta bent her eyebrows, not expecting a scolding at her address. My job is not to obey, but to do everything to save your life. And even if I have to lock you in the storeroom, I will do it, he replied. And Sveta suddenly laughed. Wow! Wiping her tears from a stormy reaction, she laughed. No one else had ever said that to me. Then Sveta saw the amazed Yaroslav for the first time and was pleased with herself. He began to behave more relaxed. Seeing that his hired woman is not a capricious rich FIFA player who looks down on everyone. Weeks passed in wild tension. Sveta did not understand why Jaeger was still not caught. Is he really so ungraceful? She was outraged at the usual breakfast with Yaroslav. It turned out that he was not stupidly preparing hot sandwiches, and Sveta herself. She rarely could force herself to spin at the stove, even for the sake of a simple dish. In order not to endanger her workers, she let them go for a while, remaining alone with the bodyguard. In the last few days, she noticed that there were more and more awkward pauses between her and Yarek. There were no such pauses before. They communicated freely, but now, mutual sympathy appeared. Now I'm really afraid of you. I said how you are, Yaroslav, after dinner. That day he walked himself, not his own. He was silent a lot and annoyed all the time. Why are you saying that? The light was cloudy, afraid to hear something disturbing. Because you have become indifferent to me. I can't support professional relationships with you anymore. I like you. I like you very much. I'm worried about you, and I want to protect you. Sveta didn't know what to say. She was filled with complex emotions. She understood the feelings of Yaroslav because she felt the same way about him. Without saying a word, she threw herself at him and got angry as if she hadn't cried for a long time. She tried to be strong, trying to make sure no one would guess how scared she was. Her father and brother would not leave her alone if they saw what was really going on with her. Quiet, quiet. I will be by your side, and I will not let anyone hurt you, said Yaroslav, pressing her against himself. Fear of a new betrayal went to the background. Sveta trusted him completely. Now their days were more like the days of young wives. I suggest we go for a picnic. We can afford a couple of weekends. I rented a cottage by the lake. I made Yaroslav happy with his beloved. We'll take some fruit and vegetables, drink something, fry some meat on the grill. There's such a beauty around. With pleasure. Sveta jumped on his neck and kissed him. Let's pack our things. The night spent on the lake became important for the lovers, because then they decided to get real close. But the worst thing was that, returning to the city, they were both deafened by unexpected guests with a sharp blow to the back of the head. Igor, in the company of two escaped prisoners, Peter and Eugene. In half a day, they ate from the belly, destroyed the house, and began to wait for the owner. Yaroslav came first. Sveta lay next to the floor with tied hands. Igor and the company were in the next room and already drunk. Oops, look who woke up. He was fun and shouted and dragged the prisoner to the center of the living room to wash up. So he took my place? Well, how are you? Well, you're a beast. Yaroslav got angry and suddenly managed to kick Yegor on the back. He screamed from pain, hitting his head against the floor. His friends immediately jumped up and awarded the rebel with several kicks to the stomach, chest, and face. Yaroslav decided that it would be better to pretend as if he had lost consciousness again. He wanted to wait until the criminals lost their vigilance. When they were carried away by the rest of the drink, Yaroslav found the strength to jump on his feet and run to the alarm button. Having pressed it, he was stabbed to the side. Svetlana woke up in the hospital. She didn't remember why she was here. Everything in her head was buzzing from the blow a few days ago. Yerek! She screamed, seeing the nurse. Where is Yerek? You woke up? Irina gently said. Please lie down calmly. I'll call the doctor now, and he will explain everything to you. Soon she was visited by Vasily Timofey. I asked you to stay with us. Through tears, her father said, kissing her cold hand. My girl, we were so worried. Well, you scared us. Timofey said, lying on the edge of her bed. And you're Romeo in the next room. But he doesn't come to his senses. In a coma. The guy was wounded in the side. There was a strong bleeding. It's good you didn't see it. No. If I were stronger, I would help him. Don't be stupid. Her father interrupted her. You couldn't do anything against these freaks. They were all caught on the spot, and now will get even longer than before. Sveta was discharged pretty quickly, but she, who had been sitting by Yaroslav's bed for a week, prayed that he would come to his senses sooner. The doctor's predictions were unsatisfactory, but Sveta believed in the best. She stroked her flat belly on the days of finding out what was waiting for her beloved child. Their only night of love. Allowed to start a new life. I wish this baby didn't lose his father. Honey, come back. You must know that you will become a father, said Sveta Yaroslav in front of the entrance. She loved to talk to him, thinking that she would get to his consciousness locked in an immobile body. Almost reaching the elevator, Sveta heard the squeak of the devices. And the hospital staff hurried to him, running into Yaroslav's ward. Oh God! She ran away. Svetlana rushed back and caught the picture as he was pulling his head out, trying to pull a long tube out of his mouth. Honey, calm down, everything is fine, she shouted, but the nurse strictly closed the door in front of her. After a few minutes, she was allowed to enter. Oh my God, I woke up, she said, with tears in her eyes. Never ever scare me like that again. I heard about the child. Yaroslav barely heard. We'll have a child. Yes, dear, we'll have a baby, Sveta kissed him. And the former wife said that I was impotent. We didn't succeed, the former doubted. Maybe she was fooling you? She was taking the first aid kit. If she wanted to leave you, she could have turned something like that. To the surprise of the doctors, Yaroslav was able to get out of there without serious consequences. He had to come to the interception for a while, but in general, he was breathing hard. Sveta leaned over the laptop in the dining room, checking some reports. Again, you are in this strange pose. Yerek strictly said, you need to move more and rest. Breathe fresh air, and not rummage your back and eyes like that. Oh, you are so boring. Sveta slammed the laptop. Better bring me that yogurt with cherry and chocolate. We are hungry. We need to play the wedding faster. While you will still be comfortable in the dress, it may be hard for you because of the noise and such a number of people. Yaroslav carefully stroked his bride on the hair and, kissing both cheeks, shaved to the refrigerator. By the way, I have a wedding gift for you. Sveta smiled, not knowing how to start this topic. I consulted a plastic surgeon here. Would you like to do an operation? I was told that it was safe. Your skin will be smooth and smooth again. I love you with all my heart, and I don't notice any flaws. Sveta looked into the eyes of her beloved. But you are shy. Do you want to see the work of this surgeon together? The people he has already helped with in the delight of his skillful hands. Wow! Only the confused Yaroslav could answer. I never thought about it. But on the wedding photos, maybe I will look better, right? The celebration took place almost 3 months after Yaroslav got rid of all the consequences of the plastic surgery. Now all the guests on the bride's side could fully appreciate the attractiveness of the broad-shouldered groom. Sveta helped to dress in a white dress that emphasized all the advantages of her figure and small belly. Seeing her, Yaroslav hardly held back his tears of happiness. "You are incredibly beautiful," he whispered to her in her ear, not to embarrass the group of craftsmen who worked on the image of Sveta. "Perzaks? Of course, my beloved." Sveta took the bride in her hand and went with him to the exit from the house. The closest people in the yard met her. Father, brother, and also old friends, employees of the firm, and relatives of Yaroslav. Walking under their delighted glances, Sveta felt the happiest. Her new, wonderful life had just begun, and she would never miss a single minute of it. Thank you for watching to the end. If you like the story, I hope your support is a thumbs up. Thank you, and all the best.